I received this New World tarantula a couple of months ago from Micro Wilderness and featured it in my top 5 black tarantulas video. And since then, I have received a lot of requests for more information on this species. So let's just jump straight into it. The Aphonopelma steindachneri has been referred to commonly as Steindachneri's ebony tarantula, and is found in California and just across the Mexican border in Baja California, along the Southern California coast ranges. It is a very common tarantula there and widely distributed, with some localized populations even being found in urban areas like Los Angeles and San Diego. An interesting fact is that morphological and molecular analysis of the Aphonopelma faunum and the Aphonopelma reversum show that these two species are not separate, independently evolving species. In fact, Aphonopelma reversum and faunum are now considered just junior synonyms of the Aphonopelma steindachneri. This species was first described as Untitled steindachneri by Osserer in 1875, and after a couple of revisions has finally ended up as Aphonopelma steindachneri, with the publication by Smith in 1995. Like most Aphonopelma tarantulas, this species is a docile, slow-growing tarantula that makes for an amazing pet. Typically, they have a black appearance, especially in adult specimens after a molt, though juveniles seem to have more of a dark brown appearance, which is also true of adults that are near pre-molt or have been in arid conditions. They have a very similar appearance to the Aphonopelma utilum and remind me of an Aphonopelma version of the Grammostola pulchra or Brazilian black tarantula. Though this species is both slower growing and slower moving than the Grammostola pulchra. They would make a great pet tarantula to keep for those that would like to have a Brazilian black but are having a hard time locating some for sale. In fact, you can pick up your own steindachneri from the sponsor of today's video, Micro Wilderness. I have worked with Nate from Micro Wilderness for a few years and have really got to know him and his business on a personal level and can't recommend them enough. In fact, Micro Wilderness produced the world's first captive bred slings in September of 2022 and have some of these captive bred spiderlings available for sale on his website right now. And if you use the link in my description or in the pinned comment, or just use the code TTC10 at checkout, you will save 10% on your entire order. I will link an unboxing video I made about Micro Wilderness above so you can learn more about them and see for yourself how they package and ship tarantulas. So head on over to microwilderness.com and use my affiliate links or the code TTC10 and save yourself 10% when buying your next amazing pet. Now, keeping this tarantula is extremely easy, and their care is essentially like that of any Aphonopelma species. I keep my spiderlings in a small acrylic enclosure, like the sling crib from Tarantula Cribs. Even though this is an arid species, I keep the spiderling on slightly damp substrate by dropping some water in the corner of the enclosure and letting it seep down into the bottom layers. I provide a hide and a tiny water dish, but seeing this spiderling at this stage of its life is very rare. Typically, they burrow down to the bottom of their enclosure, sometimes even sealing the burrow behind them, and spend the majority of the time safely snuggled up in their burrows, only coming out late at night when it is dark and quiet to get a drink or hunt for prey. As they begin to outgrow that enclosure, which can take a while, possibly as long as a few years, I move them into an adequate juvenile terrestrial enclosure. A good example would be the small slider crib, the 3x3 or 4x4 tarantula cube, or the 4-inch 360 crib, all from Tarantula Cribs. I fill the enclosure up over halfway with substrate, usually as much as 2/3 of the way full, so they have plenty of depth for burrowing. I still provide a hide and water dish and overflow the water dish once every week or two, so the substrate gets a little damp. Then I let it dry out almost completely before overflowing again. This small amount of moisture in the soil will provide ample humidity for the spider with the ventilation that these enclosures provide. Now, adults are the easiest to keep and only require around a 2.5 to 5 gallon style enclosure depending on their size. Personally, I use the Tarantula Crib's 12-inch cube or their large slider crib. Both provide excellent ventilation, crystal clear views, secure lids, and plenty of substrate depth for burrowing. Though, as adults, I find that they spend much less time hiding down in their burrows. In fact, most of their time is spent out on display in their enclosure. Though when they go into pre-molt, my Aphonopelmas typically retreat into their burrows, where they stay out of sight, and a lot of the time they end up molting in their burrow, only emerging once they have hardened back up and are looking for their first post-molt meal. For feeding, I attempt to feed my spiderlings once or twice a week and offer them small crickets, anywhere from pinheads to 1/3 of an inch in size, depending on the size of the spiderling. I do not offer any feeder more than 1/2 to 2/3 the size of their body. Small roaches or chopped up mealworms will work as well, as they are scavenger feeders as spiderlings. I have an entire video on feeding spiderlings that I will link above if you want more information. It is important to note that this species can and will go on hunger strikes where they will refuse to eat for weeks or even months at a time, and that is not something that you should worry about, as it is very typical behavior, especially when they are nearing pre-molt. One way to avoid large hunger strikes is to try and feed your spiderling based on their abdomen size. When they are skinny or the abdomen is smaller than or about the same size as the carapace, I will feed them about once or twice a week, removing any uneaten prey a few hours after offering it, and never leave any unwanted prey in their enclosure for more than 24 hours. As their abdomen gets more plump, I cut back on the amount and frequency of feeding, and try to keep their abdomen slightly larger than their carapace, and avoid overfeeding to the point that they have a very swollen round abdomen, as that will usually lead to them going off food for extended amounts of time, or even until after they have molted. Juveniles, I use the same philosophy of feeding more prey more often when they're skinny and less prey less often when they start to plump up. But as a guideline, I try and offer some food once every week or two, but no more than a few small or medium crickets at a time. Again, no prey more than 2/3 the size of the tarantula. And for adults, these seem to be the most prone to refusing food for extended amounts of time. So again, basing the frequency and amount on the size of their abdomen, I typically offer prey once a month or at most every couple of weeks. Usually I will drop in 5 or 6 large crickets, but they will also be happy with mealworms, dubia or red runner roaches, or any other feeder insects. Though I only offer hornworms, waxworms, and prey like that very sparingly, maybe only a few times a year, mainly just to switch up their diet a little. It is also worth mentioning that it is vital to make sure you are gut loading your feeder insects. A lot of the nutrients the tarantulas require just don't come from the prey themselves, but from the food the prey has recently eaten. So making sure your crickets, roaches, or other feeder insects are eating a good diet will go a long way to keeping your tarantula healthy. You can feed them vegetables or some fruits you have in your fridge, like apples, oranges, bananas, carrots, squash, and leafy greens, but not iceberg lettuce. There is very little nutritional value in iceberg lettuce. Or you can use some of the commercially available gut load diets. I tend to stay away from those that are calcium enriched, as it is more of a nutritional need for reptiles, and there has been some anecdotal evidence that too much calcium in an arachnid's diet could cause molting issues, though that is yet to be scientifically proven to the best of my knowledge. Cricket quencher or water crystals are not an adequate gut loader, and the orange cubes don't seem to be nearly as effective as just using some fresh fruits and veggies from your fridge. Now, I have used the Nature Zone Total Bites Feeder insect food and ZoomEd Natural Cricket Care, and have been pleased with the results if you're not the type of person that keeps fresh produce in your fridge. Just make sure that you offer the food you're gut loading with at least 24 hours before feeding them to your tarantulas, so they have time to get a full belly of the good vitamins and minerals. Overall, this is a very cool tarantula, especially if you like solid black tarantulas like I do. They are very docile and slow moving, which makes them a great tarantula for those looking for their first tarantula species, or even those that are just wanting to handle tarantulas, if you're into that kind of thing. And the fact that there are captive bred spiderlings available in the States right now means you can own one of these amazing tarantulas without having to worry that you are somehow contributing to the illegal pet trade or to poaching tarantulas in the wild. wild. This is a perfect tarantula to keep for any level of keeper. They are just one of the many black Aphonopelma tarantulas that make amazing pets. But if you find you have the opportunity to keep the Aphonopelma steindachneri as a pet, I highly suggest you jump at that chance. Now, if you want to learn more about black tarantulas or Aphonopelmas in the wild, then just check out these videos right here. As always, I appreciate you watching. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for buying Tarantula Collective merchandise, and I will see you next Tuesday.